trust is the foundation, right? And in order to do that, people must be able to feel like the institutions are on their side, or is listening to what their consumer needs are.
I can't wait to introduce you to Knowing Me, Knowing You, the Know Me podcast where the future of financial advice starts with discovery. We're bringing you candid conversations with top industry leaders, innovators, and behavioral finance experts, exploring how wealth managers can deepen client relationships, personalize advice at scale, and drive real business growth. Because clients don't just want financial plans, they want to feel understood. They want to be known. Stay tuned, subscribe, and get ready to transform the way you connect with clients. Know Me, transforming discovery into growth. Hi, and today we are honored to sit down with Amanda Estiverne, a visionary at the intersection of payments, inclusion, and innovation. Amanda is the director and head of payments practice at Proficient, where she helps banks and fintechs modernize infrastructure and create more inclusive financial solutions. She's also the founder of AGE Advisors, a boutique firm that helps startups and financial institutions unlock growth through responsible, purpose-driven innovation. With over 20 years of experience spanning banking, fintech, technology, and always a feature at Money 2020, Fintech Meetup, all of the top fintech conferences, Amanda is a passionate advocate for financial equity and fairness by design. She's on the board of the National Alliance for Financial Literacy and Inclusion, and she partners with Consumer Reports to shape standards like the Fair Digital Finance Framework. Amanda is also the creator of The Front Row, a Substack storytelling series chronicling the people and ideas shaping the future of finance from the seat where innovation meets inclusion. We're so excited during this International Women's Month to host you, Amanda, here and to talk about behavioral design, modern payments, bold leadership, and the future of our industry. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me. What an introduction. It sounds like a busy lady over here, right?
I bet that's true. I'm sure you are a very busy lady, and you're fighting the good fight. You are fighting for things that matter, that are rooted in values, for changing our industry for the better. Tell us really quickly as we start off, what is most exciting to you about the moment we're in right now in wealth management or financial services more broadly?
Oh my goodness. I thank you so much for that question. I mean, we see that we're in a digital transformation, right? That things are changing. We're leveraging AI to build more personalized tools. And because we're doing that, what excites me the most is the outcomes, right? How we're delivering our advice, right, through wealth management tools. And, I think it's so funny. I think about last year when I went to Money 2020, and this was the Vegas show. And I sat in on a discussion how on the next generation of advisors and how they're leveraging a lot of this technology within AI to enhance the client productivity and better assessing or personalizing some of that, the advice and how they approach, multiple different scenarios for their clients. And so to me, I'm very much so excited about that. How do we leverage technology to speak to the consumers directly and making sure that we're catering some of these tools to humans in the moment, right? I don't know, I just think I love how technology is like leveraging personalization at scale, right? And unlocking how we can, enhance the experience just to better identify and better know and understand their consumers.
I love the word no. I built a whole company around it.
Of course.
So everything around how do we help you know? That's right. How do I help you know much more about your prospect, your client, so that you're delivering them with a solution that resonates, that matters? Your work over many years has focused on fairness, inclusion, impact. Talk a little bit about that and how wealth accumulation and inclusion in your work come together. And if you have a personal story, work that you've done that really brings that to life,
Yeah.
Share that with us.
No, I appreciate this. The journey's been long, right? We talked about 20 plus years experience in financial services. And a lot of the work that I've done is on the infrastructure, like behind the scenes. It's like I always call myself like the plumber to the banking systems. And so a lot of my solutions in the past were always based off being able to expand, to provide access, to be able to let, the undeserved or the folks who are normally left out into the system. That's how I see fintech, right? Fintech provides that solution that may not necessarily be afforded to someone in your typical regulated financial institution. And so, I found myself a few years back. It's been what, a little bit like over 2 years, where I was propositioned with an opportunity to work with an organization called NAFLI, National Alliance for Financial Literacy and Inclusion. And what they wanted to do is they wanted to work with an expert within the space and really help amplify that mission around education, but also this concept of technology distribution, right? Making sure that we're all able to access certain banking products and services. And so, I've been with them for almost 2 years now, but it's been able, like working on the philanthropy side of financial services has been very, very meaningful. It's been unlocking this aspect of finding my purpose by being able to like work through concepts like fintech for social good, right? Which is where I am. I'm in this space right now where I've gotten a chance to partner with Consumer Reports on their very important program called Fair Design Playbook. It's a playbook. It's almost like a call to action to financial institutions, to fintech organizations to really think about, creating a fair digital ecosystem that speaks to all. And I've gotten a chance to do really great work with them. In fact, we're hosting a tech sprint. So last year, we spent a lot of time talking about the playbook, working with organizations to make sure that they considered the 6 very important principles as part of the playbook. And the principles are focused on transparency, inclusivity, financial well-being, which is very important, right? Safety, and some of these principles they're asking organizations to embed in their products and services. So now, instead of we've been talking about it last year, we've decided to now put this into movement, into action, and we're hosting a tech sprint in April in Atlanta, April 29th through the 30th. And we've invited a lot of the organizations that we've been talking to really have them put pen to paper and really help us build solutions that are consumer led, right? Making sure, as the question you asked me earlier, we talked about personalization, right? This is another aspect of it where we are understanding our consumers' needs and making sure to develop those technologies or the products and services to cater to that. So, I when you ask me what has brought me to this, right? What's brought me to this is just making sure that we're considering this in our technologies, right? We just need to make sure that if we are going to move into this digital ecosystem, right? We're of course we're a cashless
As
society.
we are, right? We're doing it anyway. So as we do that, yes.
Exactly. We're even leveraging agentic tools, right? There's agent pay where we might even have agents shop for us or even pay for us on our behalf, right? We still need to make sure there's a human behind that machine. And that is why I've been amplifying this work to not only be inclusive, right? Like we think about payments, making sure to expand access, uh, um, and utility, but now we want to make sure that it's fair and that we're not having folks in debt traps because we've set them up. And so, I'm so fortunate to be able to work with NAFLE, to work with Consumer Reports, and put my purpose into action and working on some of this very impactful work because we are the future that we build, right?
Yeah. So a lot of people are listening to this, and this is an area that Nomi has been used to help support for a lot of our clients. And you talk about we're building these frameworks. We're building I forgot what you called it. It is playbooks.
Playbooks.
So you've got the playbook, and you also said at the beginning that you work in the plumbing. You're really working at the layer of infrastructure and baking it into design. And so, one of the things that we found with customers that we work with is that they struggle to operationalize financial wellness. What does that mean? How do I build that in? And I think one of the things that in the industry we are conditioned to do is we sell products. We don't listen to our clients. We don't even have a way to listen to the consumer. And so the plumbing, I think, is what needs to be reimagined in so many ways. And it's actually a huge part of Nomi's value proposition is we're giving you the voice of the consumer so that you can have that embedded into the way that you're meeting them, not where they were in the past based on their transactions and their spending, but where they want to go. So when you think about this infrastructure and operationalizing of the playbook, how are you working with institutions to put it into practice, to put those playbooks into their systems, their infrastructure, their plumbing?
Yeah. No, thank you so much for that. I'm so proud of Nomi because Nomi taps into the initiatives around financial well-being because that's very important, right? We understand that there's aspects of financial decisions that can be based off psychological triggers or things, that we're, facing or scenarios that we're facing. But institutions, what do they like to leverage? Data, right? Data is important, right? How is the data collected? Thinking about how fees are disclosed, right? What happens to a consumer that makes mistakes? Like operationalizing some of this impact or operationalizing the design is really making sure you embed the consumer's voice into the product development, right? Making sure that we're listening, as you mentioned, right? Nomi is listening. And, part of the fair design playbook is also providing insights on how to measure those impacts, right? Alongside with revenue. And I think that's really what it is. That's what speaks to the organizations, that speaks to the enterprises when they see the data, right? And so, I mentioned AI because there's so many agentic tools that are coming out here, but thinking about building explainability, right? I've been having conversations with regulators about that. Explainability is important, especially in our AI systems and how we're leveraging this data. So to me, it's, having these design disciplines and principles are very important. And that's what's going to keep us kind of understanding the impact of the products and services that we do build for our consumers.
100%. As you're working and representing building AGE advisors, you're helping fintechs and these institutions unlock with purposeful innovation, and you're clearly still purpose driven in everything you're doing. How are you helping bring purposeful into practice? And how is that different than their traditional day in, day out approach to marketing, sales, selling products? How are you kind of kicking them out of their day in, day out and saying, let's actually focus on what we're here to accomplish today?
Yeah, I it's so funny because I always think these are simple concepts, right? It's one of the reasons why I love like the community bankers and the credit unions because they listen to the consumers. But with our advising firm, what we're really doing is we're asking questions about what problems are we actually solving for and for whom, right? What does this solve in terms of impact in people's lives? Like, where's the value? And as we're, in this digital society, this concept of value driven product or value driven outcome is really important, right? And so those are the basic questions that we're helping them. We're helping them understand the underserved markets, right? How do we solve for the folks that have that are credit invisible, right? How do we solve for the small business owners that are trying to get paid much faster, quicker, or they're trying to organize their invoices, you know, we have new tools and rails like stable coins that gives you programmable payouts. Like, how can we now bring an audience of small business owners that already struggle with invoice payments and things in contracts into a new system, or a new rail that alleviates some of that. And some of this is just, like I said, asking that question, like, what are the problems that we're solving for our consumers, right? What is the value or the core value that you're trying to bring to your audience? And being able to talk to these organizations, it's amazing. We get a chance to aid in exposure around some of the initiatives that they're working on. For example, the Consumer Reports was such a great opportunity for us to partner with them and really help them put together initiatives that help to showcase this great work that they're doing. So it's really, purposeful innovation means you don't have to choose between doing good and doing well. It's helping the organizations make sure that there's value and purpose in some of the initiatives that they're putting together. And to me, that's where the real impact lies. And of course, we can make that measurable and at least be able to tie that back to the revenue.
What if financial planning wasn't just about numbers, but about you, your values, your goals, your vision for the future? Nomi is transforming client discovery for wealth managers, going beyond assets and risk scores to uncover what truly matters. With behavioral insights and real-time data, Nomi helps advisors personalize advice, build deeper connections, and grow their businesses. Because the best financial decisions start with knowing you. Discover the future of client engagement at nomi.com. Yeah, you've been working with a lot of different types of financial institutions, a lot of payment platforms, regulators for a very long time. If you are going to shine a light on some of the key blind spots, what are they? Are they struggling to see the broader context about the consumers? Are they struggling to understand the intent and the desires of these consumers? Are they struggling to just um, to serve them as opposed to kind of put them through these the operational pains that come with financial services?
Yeah,
Where do you see are the biggest challenges?
yeah, it's financial institutions. We can't blame them. It's they're based off consistent spending, right? It's you get your bill monthly, right? You get paid bi-weekly. And that is the system. The banks hold the funding to be able to move that funding, move money. But I don't think that I think our biggest blind spot is the concept of financial volatility and adaptability, right? It's the planning for the unplanned moments. To me, that is the blind spots that I don't know. We're building more products and services to do that, but it's just being able to cater to the consumer where if something bad happens, if the roof crashes or, a car accident. I think sometimes that's the blind spot and that's the planning that, I think wealth management does, but it's just making sure we build the products and services that can cater to those types of those issues. Like, I think of like penalty fees for the undeserved, right? Like, hey, maybe you had an incident, or chargebacks. Like, I think about chargebacks and maybe someone had to make a payment. So some of those are the blind spots that I think, the more that we understand a consumer's life cycle, or not even life cycle, more of like their seasonal, things that will pop up besides a graduation, besides,
Um, the hiccup, the
preparing.
hiccups that are unanticipated. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's, planning for the unplanned is the largest blind spots. And we see that already in the numbers of our consumers. We see this in our macroeconomic environment. We see this in inflation rates. And so it's just something that we need to get better at, projecting and providing services to kind of aid in those efforts. And that's why I believe in financial education is key, But then it's the inclusion aspect of it. It's the technology distribution. Are we building these products to not only educate the consumers, to be that backup, to support them while they're going through these scenarios?
I think what you're saying impacts the entire spectrum of individuals across the country, and across the world. It doesn't matter how much money you have in the bank. The hiccups are often the ones that are hard to plan for, and we see that even in financial planning. Today, financial planning and wealth is very good at the very generic, "Hey, do you have enough money to retire at 65, or do you have enough money so that you don't outlive your money if you die at 83." We're very good at these generic, let me plot a number on a graph and show you and model for you if this is gonna work or not. Now, where that comes into question, proven that 81% of inheritors, whether that is a partner or a child, fires their financial advisor during a hiccup, and those hiccups are generally divorce, death, a massive expense, a health issue. There are it could be the advisor moving from one firm to the other. So what I think we see is that the hiccups are not they expose that the relationship is fragile.
Yeah.
It's not as resilient as the firm thought it was. And so how are you bundling in trust? Because trust is what drives that resiliency into the plumbing and the infrastructure as we're building the relationships with financial firms.
Yeah. Yeah, no, to me, trust is the foundation of financial services, right? Like most of these organizations, they need to be FDIC insured. But I think there's an interesting paradox to that, right? Like where, you just mentioned our environment, right? There's so many different scenarios now, especially with the gig economy, where we are finding a lot more of our population is, in that side of the house where, they need their payments as soon as possible once, the work has been done. And so, trust is the foundation, right? And in order to do that, people must be able to feel like the institutions are on their side, or is listening to what their consumer needs are. And so to me, that's why we're amplifying this fair design playbook, because the more and more our ecosystem is fair, right, is transparent and being able to be inclusive, the more and more us as consumers will trust all these new products and services that are coming out, or even trust all these digital transformation tools that are happening, for us to leverage these tools to be able to bank.
Yeah. And when you look at digital transformation broadly, and you think about inclusion and fairness, as you've talked about, how are you guiding regulators and the institutions themselves to incorporate the more emotional components, empathy, and actually deeply understanding the experience that the customer is going through?
Yeah. Empathy is my favorite word. To me, the work that I'm doing is I'm trying to build more empathy in banking, right? And I know that, and the reason that I am very much progressing this concept is because it requires understanding and learning about one's personal scenarios, right? Like it's really speaking up, it's building that diversity of thought in terms of the consumer's overall experience or their journey, right? In terms of how they leverage some of these tools. And when we add innovation in the mix, what it does, it just builds better products, better solutions for our consumers. It's another reason why I'm a big fan of the community banks, like the regional banks, because that's what they do. They're listening to their clients, they're listening to their consumers, and they're providing the solutions that's best, that'll serve them, right? If the community is not signing up for enough mortgage applications, they're hosting events to be able to educate the consumers on how to, land a mortgage, or they're building small business workshops to me, this is the empathy side of banking. Now, once we get to that, where we understand the consumer, where we've listened, right? This is where now the innovation could be the next phase. Now we build the solutions based off their actual scenarios. And so to me, this is very important. I know we're leveraging a lot of agentic tools, we're leveraging AI to enhance our automation, enhance our productivity, but we just must remain human in some of these tools and services that we're building. And in order to remain human, we have to have empathy to be able to listen to our consumers.
I love that you shared the story of here's how they're cultivating empathy. And we have another wealth leader who came on the podcast recently and said, trust is also very closely paired with intimacy. And what these credit unions and regional banks are doing is they're building intimacy in their communities. They're actually spending time together. They're getting intimate. They are getting to know exactly what's driving you. So I love that you shared that story. So talk to us a little bit before we end about the front row.
Oh my goodness.
What is the front row all about? What story are you telling? What inspired it? And what do you want the outcomes to be?
No, I love this. The front row is like my, passion hobby. It's me, building stories around all these opportunities to be able to go to a multitude of different events and get a chance to speak at them. But it's also really bringing in the conversations that are outside of the event, right? We know that there's activation events that happen outside of the conference room floors. And it's just giving folks some insight on what I'm learning, being able to share that. I've always called myself a teacher, and not only a student of the industry, but a teacher as well. And so the front row gives the opportunity for the folks who don't get a chance to attend the events to, pull the insights, pull the learnings. The front row came about where I do these LinkedIn posts and I recap all my adventures. Like if I'm in Money 2020 Amsterdam, or if I'm in Bangkok, or recently in Riyadh, I like just talking to everybody about what I've gotten a chance to learn, what I've experienced. And so I'm just so glad that I get a chance to share that. It's nothing like, I'm trying to make $1 million with the front row on the Substack, but it's something where I get a chance to share um all the learnings that I gain and share a little bit about myself with my audience.
It all comes back to that intimacy and building trust, and you're bringing people to where you've been. That's fantastic. All right, Amanda, we always end with what is an instance in your life or a conversation that you've had that totally changed your relationship with money?
Ooh, oh my goodness. That's a good question. It's so funny. My relationship with money started very early, right? I've been in financial services for a very long time. But when I think about the conversation about money, I think about, the birth of my son and how I had to set a 529 plan for him to get him ready, and that concept of generational wealth really clicked something in, where it wasn't just, having your job to pay for bills, but it was, creating legacy through wealth. And so to me, as I think about this, that is, probably what changed my thought process about money, because it's more than just building traditions that, and memories for him, but it's also making sure that he's covered and he's protected, even when mom's not there.
I love that. And it's so rooted also in clearly a value for education because the 529 is passing on the ability to fund your education and making that pain kind of a little bit less painful for the next generation.
Exactly, exactly. Ooh, financial education. That's why Nathalie and I go together. That's why.
I love it. Amanda, you are a superstar. You're so well known. I'm sure my audience is a little bit more wealth focused, but if you are ever at a financial fintech conference, I'm sure you're going to see in just Amanda's presence how she draws people in. She's always there. She's always giving a keynote. And I'm so grateful that you gave us your voice today and talking about your mission, the clarity of the conversation, empathy and how critical it is, how it really permeates through the financial system and how you're trying to operationalize the voice of the consumer to change the way that we engage. You're showing the industry what it means to innovate responsibly and to center fairness and inclusion as a feature, not as a footnote and not as a marketing blurb, but to actually have integrity and authenticity as they talk about it. Where can our listeners learn more about you and your work in the front row?
Yeah. Oh, I would love everybody to find me on LinkedIn and, give me a follow. I'm also on Substack, and it's called The Front Row. And follow my good friends at Consumer Reports. They're doing so many great things. It's a very strong team of executive leaders that are really, putting together this report and really trying to advocate for us. And so it's my job, my responsibility to help be a sponsor for them and really help, put that out here. And, I know this is a group of wealth managers, and I'm sure this is very important because the more we educate the consumers, their financial products and the options that they have, the better overall they'll be.
Absolutely. And the importance of planning. Our listeners, what does inclusive design mean to you? How are you building trust, empathy? How are you actually hearing the voice of the consumer? I will give you a tip. You can use Nomi. We actually make it super easy. Bring Nomi into your practice. If this conversation was inspiring to you, please drop a comment, share, rate this podcast. Amanda's voice matters to hundreds of thousands of people around the globe. They are paying her to come to these events and talk about inclusion in fintech, the future of our industry, how it's being applied to the way that payments, credit, and even wealth rails are being institutionalized across their businesses. Amanda, thank you so, so much for being here.
Thanks so much for having me.
It was a joy.
Thank you for joining us on the Knowing Me, Knowing You podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. Your support helps us bring more transformative conversations to you. Until next time, keep discovering, keep growing, and remember, you're in control of your own financial story. Follow us for more conversations on financial confidence, self-discovery, and the future of money.